Thank you very much, Mercy, and good evening, everyone. It is good to see all of you. I'm Boniface Harrison, Executive Director of Mwem Action Post. Mwem Action Post is a social enterprise focused on climate action, digital skills, and civic engagement. I am particularly happy to meet my co-panelists and the audience who happen to be friends of mine. And also I take the opportunity to congratulate you on this bold step that you're taking. We are with you, and this is only just the beginning. So looking forward to a great discussion. Thank you, Mercy. Thank you, Mercy, for that question on why awareness alone is not enough. Where I come from, there is a saying that the elders have, that an idea that is in the mind does not help resolve a case. It is much better when it's said in Kamba. But really, knowledge, yeah, thank you, James. James can have a feel about what that wisdom would sound. That means that really having knowledge is not sufficient to bring change. Action is what always matters. Because, and I think a lot of interventions by development partners, NGOs, is always about sharing knowledge. But translating that knowledge into measurable actions in the community, that is what makes a difference. And in the context of disaster reduction, disasters are actually a very sensitive phenomenon in the community, because when disasters occur, they disrupt lives in society. Deaths are witnessed, a destruction of property, and a lot of disorientation of day-to-day life. And so, the people having the knowledge that, for example, a flood would happen, that knowledge would not help them as much as them knowing that a flood is coming, so we need to do 1, 2, 3. People may know about a risk, but they lack the resources or the skills to prepare. Because, for example, let's have a context of the swelling of the river, the Nairobi River, that usually happens frequently. If people know that Nairobi River is going to flood in the coming rains, but they do not have money to relocate from that place, they do not know what they need to do to ensure that that flood does not hit them, chances are that disaster is going to eat them while they are still at the same place. Even places where landslides are predicted, where earthquakes are predicted. And information, again, may be too general or difficult to understand. Sometimes information can be shared, okay, there will be a disaster. Then it is just generic. It has not come directly to talking to people, because as you have had some subsequent questions to me about communication, knowledge is also about communication. If we are communicating language about a disaster, then we have to speak in a language that is relatable and that people can understand the consequences of this disaster that is oncoming. For example, again, with the example of Nairobi River, it is one thing to tell them Nairobi River will flood and telling them in 2 months' time, these your houses you see here will be swept away. And this flooding might happen when you are asleep. So there's a need for you to vacate. Those are two different approaches. One of them is vague and generic. The other one is very specific and directly relevant to a person's life. Additionally, the awareness also is affected by who is sharing the awareness, because there are many conspiracy theories regarding disasters. You may have heard sometimes when people are being requested or asked to vacate in places, you hear that now this is not a disaster, guys. These guys want to grab this land, unajua wamepatiwa hiyo ni kitu inaendelea in the world. There is a new world order. So people are telling people there's a disaster and then they are stealing the land. So that means people have knowledge, yes, but they're not going to act on it because they believe that that knowledge is being shared with an intention of causing harm to them. Yeah, and you know, as Africans, we have a lot of attachment to places. You will hear that this is the place where I've given birth to all my children. I cannot live here. You know, this is this position where my bed is. I cannot live. So people might be informed, but they don't trust the source. They are too held up to their traditions and cultures, and they may lack resources and the skills to transition into a safer locations. So then effective communication and support is needed to ensure that communities can translate the knowledge about disasters into action. Effective communication, as I have mentioned earlier, is ensuring that information is clear, direct, and emotional and relatable to people on what is oncoming to them. In terms of support, it's important to not just inform people about a disaster. It's also important to give them financial resources, support like transport and resettlement. That is very important. Instead of coming to give rapid support, like giving blankets where people are feeling cold, it's important to prepare early, set out land where people can move to. So, and in terms of culture and mistrust, now that takes time, because let's say if people have lost trust in a government or in a certain official, and then this is the same person who is coming to relay information about a disaster to them, well, they may know, okay, you're telling us, but we know you have we don't trust you. So the knowledge may be disseminated, they know, but they don't trust that person, or they are too held to the traditions. So that change is very important. It is a responsibility. If a leader thinks that he's not trusted by people, they better find a channel where another person can deliver that information on their behalf to ensure that people do not disregard their information. So really, back to your question, awareness alone is not enough. It is action that makes a difference.
How can communication or media influence people's preparedness before disaster occurs? To you.
Yes, thank you, Marcy. And indeed, communication and media can influence how people respond to disasters and even how they're able to recover and how they prepare, especially for disasters. And one of the key roles of media and communication has been mentioned severally by my co-panelists, is providing early warnings. And I think early warnings is just, to simplify the language, is to make people aware early enough so that they can make certain decisions. Of course, if and when they are supported to take those decisions towards more safety. Another role of media is to explain climate and disaster risks in simple and accessible language. Because as Brian mentioned, science is understood as a very complex field, but we can be able to break down scientific knowledge into simple, digestible language that can be actioned by ordinary citizens. Because we may not do a lot of citations in a public baraza. We just need to tell them what is there scientifically, but in a language that is understood. So media plays that role. We need to also share practical preparedness measures. And practical preparedness measures, recently I was facilitating a dissemination of a toolkit. And one of the key principles we were exploring is directness and specificity. In terms of how we design communication. Is this communication that a person can take action on? Are we providing clear steps on what needs to be done? So when communication is very clear, instead of telling people about an oncoming drought, why don't we tell them between this month and this month, get seeds that are adaptable to low rains. Start doing this and this. Very clear information that can be acted on. Also educating people on evacuation procedures and emergency contacts. We find that many times when disasters occur, people panic and they're not able to be safe. So when information is shared earlier on what they can do to protect, for example, in the nations where earthquakes are very common, I believe information there, governments have put in place structures to ensure that people are always informed and educated. You even see in universities and other institutions where even fire drills are done to just give people an idea of what they should do in case a fire erupts. I think also the context of disasters is very broad, beyond climate change and other social issues, towards even workplace disasters and many other general disasters. And another key role of communication is to ensure that we use trusted platforms to share information, because you can imagine if you're sharing a text message on an oncoming flood and then your SMS is flagged as a spam or inaandikwa somebody from committee. These days the communication platforms and apps can attach a name based on reports that have been given about a certain phone number. You know, that will make people not trust that information, because, or you're sending an email to people about who live in definitely a leafy suburb somewhere, telling them that there could be a landslide in an area where they are living, and then when you're sharing, your email goes to spam or comes with that red label. Be careful not to open the contents of this email. That will make people not trust that source of information. So, and also working with the local leaders, ensuring that we get sufficient community entry into places so that we do not go and scare people, and the local leaders have not yet introduced our information to other people. And I know Beatrice works a lot with communities, and these are some of the key issues that are considered when you're doing community work, to ensure that there is ownership of that information. You can come as a scientist with all the knowledge or a community expert with all the knowledge and statistics that you have, very heartfelt message, but if people cannot see their person in that communication, they will not trust you. So I think I'll combine this with how we can combat misinformation. I think I see this word combat, and I remember how we faced sanctions on social media because of using this word combat when we were doing a certain workshop. But really, climate disinformation, disaster disinformation is a very, very, very fervent issue, and it's important that we counter it and tackle it effectively, because anytime you see a flood has happened, a fire has erupted at a place, a drought is being reported, you start seeing videos moving around that cars are being submerged, where people are dying of hunger, where cows are dying of hunger, and sometimes these videos are not true. They're meant to spread fear and make people panic. And when people panic, then they can get into more danger. We were having a discussion with a professor of mine in a certain session, and he asked us, what would you do if an earthquake happens? And most of us responded, I will run and get out of the building so that things don't fall on me. I will do this. And he told us a very simple thing. You just need to make sure that you hide under something. If you hide under a table, hide under a bed, ensure that, for example, you cannot be hit by glasses from windows or stones that are falling. That's just that simple. Because if you start running, you will break your leg, or now materials will start, the debris will start falling on you. So when we spread misinformation, that we create panic, and now that affects how we take action. Fact checking is very important. I think we are all creators of information here, digital creators. Simon Juguna, I'll check your comment. Yeah. Fact checking is very important. When we are change makers, for example, all of us here, we are going to be, the days of only trained journalists and huge public figures sharing information are gone. Right now, everybody is a creator. You can create information that it reaches millions of people. Tomorrow, Mwangi, you can make a post on X and you get 1 million views. So then we have the huge responsibility of fact checking. Even if you want to report a fire, the first one, ensure that you confirm if it has really happened, if the effects you're reporting are actually what has happened on the ground. So we can do that through working with the local leaders. If you have heard that disaster has happened somewhere, contact them and ask them, is it true? So that you can share information that is verified. All right, you can even check from media outlets and ensure that you share information that has been fact checked. That is a big issue that we are facing with climate and disaster disinformation. Ensure official communication is clear, consistent, and very accessible. Use multiple communication channels to reach different communities. To prevent disinformation can actually be done through providing sufficient information consistently. Because if we understand what this community consumes a lot, if they consume the radio, if they consume social media, if they consume television, then we are able to keep communicating to them consistently, even if it's through providing a live feed. So when you're providing a live feed, it is easier to counter misinformation that is being spread by a person sharing a video. You know, like for example, if anytime I want to monitor how protests are ongoing in the CBD, I just check live feed and know. But sometimes some live feeds are fake. You go on YouTube and find a live feed of a mandamano that happened in 2022. And it is live. I don't know how those guys do that kind of thing, but it's important to also ensure that the information you're consuming is coming from the trusted sources. Any day, I have this bias, and I have been called out even by the Bloggers Association of Kenya, but I still think that in times of disasters, mainstream media is a trusted source of information. Yeah, thank you, Beatrice. It is a trusted source of information. And let's encourage communities we work with not to feed on information from, let me not say bloggers, now from unprofessional media sources, because that can really cause a lot of danger. You can be lied to that now maji imeshachukua turn, sasa inashuka hiyo side ya kwenu. Mnaanza kutoroka, mnakimbia, mnaibiwa, people could be doing their own things with their own intentions. So those would be my views around how the role of media and communication. And media and communication is not, we have agreed, it is not only trained journalists and big media houses. It is ourselves. What are we doing? Are we informing communities early? Are we using simple language? Are we being clear and telling them what exactly they need to do to ensure that they are safe? And how are we combating misinformation? Are we fact-checking? Are we ensuring that we are confirming with local leaders, with community organizations, with other media houses, to ensure that we are sharing information that is factual and actionable? And again, ensuring that in times of disasters, we have clear and verified means of communication. It could be definitely and most preferably mainstream media or government sources. Thank you very much. I will get there, and I welcome any questions based on what I've shared. Thank you. I forgot to check a comment which was made by there was a comment which was made here, and it is good that we check it. Mr. Harrison, a lot of climate communication still operates on the deficit model, assuming that if we just give people more information, behavior will change. But we know from behavioral science and from African context that risk perception, culture, and trust in messengers matter more than data dumps. given that, how do we move beyond awareness-based campaigns to build communication ecosystems that are participatory, locally credible, and actually shift norms and decisions around climate resilience? And how do we ensure that shift beyond reach and impressions to prove real behavior change at SME and household level? Simon Nyokabi from JQuad. Thank you very much for that powerful contribution, Simon. We had shared earlier about moving from awareness to action. And one of the key issues I had shared on was culture and trust. Trust is, for example, if people have a problem with a particular leader, and this leader is the same one who is coming to share an early warning system with them, chances are they will not regard that leader. And we had also explored some conspiracy beliefs that come up with you're being told to move from this place because some people want to grab your land. So those issues can be countered if one, even if it is particular individuals who have authority to do that, they can find dissemination channels that are trustworthy. For example, let's say a certain political leader is known for lying. Now, instead of that leader driving an early warning system, they can delegate the role to a local media house, which is more trusted because it is believed to be bipartisan. So the community will not think that this is a lie because they always listen to news there every day. But if you are a leader who knows that your trust has issues with the community, and then you proceed to talk to them about critical issues, then they will not take it seriously. They will think that you are in another episode. They will think that you want to take their land. They will not trust you. And this is beyond what many of you may be thinking. Lack of trust is everywhere, even in student leadership levels, even at home. If people have a problem with their father or with their mother, they are likely not to listen to them when they are giving them counsel. So then you go and look for the brother of your parent, then you tell them, go and speak to this person because they will listen to you better. That is a way we can ensure that we bridge that gap on mistrust. And the cultural, I fully agree with you. The fact that dumping information and statistics is not really going to change behavior, but consistent action and creating communities of practice where we work with a small group of people, then we start translating the change of behavior to the broader community. That is a way we can do to enhance resilience. Because if certain people say, hey manze, we've been told this place, like for example, let me give you an example of the olden days when we were growing up in the village. There was a time when kipindupindu was a big issue, cholera. And there used to be health officers from the government who could come to communities and educate people about cleanliness. And they worked with a few number of people, and then the women would create what in Kamba is called miali, or folk songs, that they sing about them washing utensils and drying them on the rack outside. And those would really go a long way into changing people's behavior towards being more clean. So really working with a small group of people, establishing a community of practice, and then allowing the behavior change to move towards the community is a proven way on how we can help change the behavior of our community. But we cannot forcefully do it. Thank you very much. I think I have responded to also questions as well.